So we're here on the Brooklyn Bridge. There's all kind of people taking in the city. People walking their dogs, couples holding hands, people driving cars, people riding trains, all different kinds of people. Yet they have one thing in common. They're asking the one basic question of life. Why am I here? What's my purpose? Your purpose is to know Jesus, to enjoy Him, to worship Him, to follow Him. Yet, a lot of people are bored with their life. And a lot of Christians are too. And because they're bored with their faith, they believe Jesus is boring. But Jesus is not boring. He is God. He is the Lord of all the lords and the King of all the kings. We were created to live for something bigger than ourselves. Actually, we were created to live for someone bigger than ourselves. His name is Jesus. Are you bored with your life? Are you bored with your faith? Are you bored with Jesus? Sadly, I think some people believe Jesus is boring because they're bored with their faith. And I think often when people are bored with their faith, it's because they don't really understand the calling that Jesus has on their life. I mean, even think about how many times we miss what God has for us today because we're always looking forward to the next stage of life. Like if we were to start our life back over, remember when we were young, we're like, you know what? I can't wait till I'm tall enough to ride the rides at the amusement park. And then that happens and you say, I can't wait till I'm old enough to be a teenager because teenagers know everything, right? And then you go, now I can't wait till I'm old enough to get my driver's license because once I can drive a car, I know there's a whole nother world out there. And then once we get our driver's license, remember we say, we couldn't wait till we graduated high school because then it was just going to feel like freedom. And then once we graduated high school, we say, you know what, now I can't wait to go off to college or start my career. And then that happens. And then we say, you know what? I can't wait to get married because when I get married, that other person is going to complete me. And then when we get married, you say, you know what? I can't wait to have kids because when I have kids, now I'm going to even have a greater purpose. So now I can't wait to have kids. And now that we have kids, we say, you know what? I can't wait till my kids are old enough to move out of my house, right? And then we say, you know what? I can't wait to retire. Because when I retire, I'm going to do a lot of fishing and playing golf. And then I think if we're not careful, this is where our American dream can turn into a nightmare. That if the Lord allows, one day we wake up and we're 75, 80, 85 years old and go, what have I done with my life? I've just gone through the motions. I've just gone through the mundane. I totally missed what God had for me each day because I was always looking forward to the next stage of my life because I was bored with my day. And it's so easy to just get in the rut of the routine, isn't it? Where we wake up, maybe we read our Bible, pray, get the kids ready, get them off to school, and then we go to work or we have so many errands we have to do. And then we get the kids home from school, then we got to cook dinner, and then we go to ball practices, and then we get them in bed, and then we take a deep breath and go, woo, I survived another day. And then we wake up and do the whole thing again tomorrow. We can even approach our faith like that. We wake up on Sundays, get the kids ready, rush them into church. We're late. We want to hit the coffee bar. We go into service. We think Christianity mainly is just getting saved, baptized. Then we sit on our blessed assurances, going to a bunch of potluck dinners, complaining about the world. And then we just continue on unaffected. But Jesus wasn't boring, and in following Him shouldn't be boring. Yes, we may have the mundane task of every day, but now there's purpose in that. How do we know Jesus wasn't boring? Because people wanted to be around Him. We know He was fun and winsome and approachable because people always wanted to be around Him. You know who people don't flock to? Is angry, boring people. So how do we see our faith as an exciting, purposeful faith? Is that we see the glory of God in everything we do. You may be doing something that feels mundane, but see the glory of God in it. For example, if you're waiting in that long line to drop your kids off at school, maybe that's a moment that God is slowing you down to spend time talking to him and spend time with your kids. You look at the kids God has entrusted you with or your grandkids. You know what that is? It's a great ministry opportunity. That one of your greatest callings in life is to disciple the next generation. So Jesus isn't boring. Christianity isn't boring. The Bible isn't boring. We just have to see it in a proper light. In fact, in Luke 24, Jesus has already come to earth, lived, he was crucified, he was buried, and he has been resurrected. But there's two disciples that are walking on a road to a town called Emmaus. These disciples don't realize that Jesus had come back from the grave yet. And they're really dejected. And the reason they're dejected is because they were confused about the purpose of Jesus. They believed that Jesus, being the Messiah, would come and overthrow the power of the Roman government. But Jesus came to overthrow a different power, the power of sin. And these guys didn't understand that at the time. I think sometimes we can be bored with our faith because we think Jesus is predictable. But Jesus isn't predictable. All through the Gospels, Jesus would do things that would catch people off guard all the time. He would even say things that would catch people off guard. There's nothing predictable or boring about Jesus. But Jesus, in his kindness and his compassion, meets these two disciples on the road to Emmaus. They don't recognize who he is yet. But Jesus, because he cares about people, asks them what's going on. And they kind of retort back and go, are you the only person here who hasn't heard what's going on? Pretty sure Jesus knew what happened. It happened to him. And Jesus begins to talk to them. And then Jesus begins to walk them through the scriptures. I mean, think about being in a Bible study led by Jesus. Jesus begins to walk them through the scriptures and points out every prophecy in the Old Testament that would point to his suffering, that would point to his crucifixion, and ultimately would point to his resurrection. So he spends time walking them through the scriptures. So I love when they eventually realize who Jesus is. One thing we want to point out right here is everything we know about Jesus comes from the Bible. God primarily reveals himself through his word. And some people go, well, we can know about God through nature. Well, the only reason we know that is because Romans tells us that. Everything we primarily know about God and who he is, everything we primarily know about Jesus comes from the word of God. See, you can't separate Jesus from the scriptures. And that's what this whole Bible study has been about, is that there's a lot of people that unfortunately go, hey, I love Jesus, I just don't like the Bible. However, Jesus, the real one, he is found in the word of God. That's how we know who the real Jesus is. So we primarily know about Jesus by spending time with him and spending time in his word. They finally realize who Jesus is. And then I love Luke 24, verse 32. Listen to what these two disciples say in Luke 24, verse 32. It says, they said to one another, wasn't our hearts burning within us while he was talking with us on the road and explaining the scriptures to us? This is amazing. Saying that there was this passion inside of us, this burning of our heart that took place when we spent time with Jesus and spent time in his word. You know what that tells me? There's nothing boring about spending time with Jesus in his word. There's nothing boring about following Jesus. There's nothing boring about the real Jesus. In that moment, they realize even a greater purpose for their life, that their Messiah, their King, their Jesus had overcome the grave. And immediately at the end of the story, what they do is they go tell everyone they see that Jesus lives. It's the same purpose of our life. We go, why are we still here? Yes, we get to go to heaven one day. What a great reward. But the reason we're still here on earth is because Jesus lives. It's a truth that we get to proclaim from the neighborhoods to the nations. Jesus lives. The tomb is empty, but the throne of God is full of the risen King of Kings and Lord of Lords, Jesus. And because Jesus lives, hope lives. Because Jesus lives, peace lives. Because Jesus lives, joy lives. Because Jesus lives, love lives. Jesus lives. And that's an exciting reason to know Jesus and to make him known. I don't know about you. I'm not really a morning person. So a lot of times I wake up in the morning and instead of saying, "Good morning, Lord," I say, "Good Lord, it's morning." But that's a reason to get out of bed every day because our Jesus lives. And now the purpose of our existence here on earth is to know him and to make him known, to declare to the world that Jesus lives. So in light of that, I want to ask you a question. Why should we ever follow someone who can't do anything different than we can do all by ourselves? Let me ask that question again. Why should we ever follow someone who can't do anything different than we can do all by ourselves? Let me explain what I mean. There's this incredibly sobering statistic that says 1 out of 1 dies. That's a 100% rate. So that means I can live, I can die, be buried, and stay dead all by myself. So again, why should I follow someone who can't do anything different than I can do all by myself? Let me give you some examples of what I'm talking about. There's currently 4,200 world religions, and the gospel of Jesus Christ is not another world religion. It stands completely apart. Let me give you some examples of what I mean. Let's take Buddha of Buddhism. Buddha lived, he claimed to be somebody, he was buried, he stayed dead. I don't know about you, I can do that all by myself. So why follow him? Why revere him? Why point people to him? Let me give you another example. Muhammad, the central figure of Islam. He lived, he claimed to be somebody, he died, he was buried, he stayed dead. I don't know about you, I can do that all by myself. Why follow him? Why revere him? Why point people to him? Let's take Joseph Smith of Mormonism. He lived, he claimed to be somebody, says some angels gave him some golden tablets. He died, he was buried. I think you get the common theme here. He what? He stayed dead. I don't know about you. I can do that all by myself. Why follow him? Why revere him? Why point people to him? But let me tell you about Jesus, the exciting Lord of Lords and King of Kings. He's not the boring one. Let me tell you about Jesus. He lived, he claimed to be God. He proved time and time again he is God. He died, he was buried, and 3 days later, he did what Buddha did not do. He did what Muhammad did not do. He did what Joseph Smith did not do. Our Jesus busted out of the grave. Now, I don't know about you. I can't do that all by myself. I think I'll follow him. I'll worship him. I'll tell the world about him. He is not a boring Jesus, and our faith should not be a boring faith. It's an adventure of knowing Jesus and making Jesus known because he lives and there's no one like him. Aren't you glad that the real Jesus is much better than a false, boring Jesus?